here's your host, Alex Garrett.
All right, well, it is another week, which means it's Terminello's take for this week. And Lou Terminello, I'm on the train, not going to Citi Field, although I guess I have a day game today. Let's start in Queens, okay? We got this team named the Mets, and we got this team snubbed because, to my knowledge, Brandon Nimmo and Lindor should be on the All-Star roster, shouldn't they?
Absolutely, Alex. And Alex, thank you for always having me. I appreciate it. Yes, Brandon Nimmo, one of the most underrated players in baseball, has been a part of this Met resurgence, as has Lindor, since they moved Lindor from the middle of the lineup to the leadoff spot. And he plays a brilliant shortstop. I know he has 8 errors this year, which for him is a lot, but for most is not. He just is a brilliant fielder. Yeah, he should be on the team. So should Nimmo. Alonso should not. He has not had an all-star first half. I don't know if picking Alonso was to coincide with him being on the home run derby roster. But again, there's guys who've been in the home run derby who haven't made the all-star team. So, whatever. But the Mets have done a very good job. And surprise, as you know, I said there was no buzz and there's no excitement, that they were bad and boring. And I think there's a couple of factors that have seen them go from 11 games under 500 about a month ago to 1 game over 500. I did not think they would ever come close to 500 when they were 23-34. A couple of things have turned them around. Obviously, moving Lindor, as we just said, to the leadoff spot has helped. But Francisco Alvarez, he missed 7 weeks of the season, and he has been part of this resurgence, not only offensively, but you hear Quintana and Sean Manaea talk about how he's helped them behind the plate. And when you look at their splits between when Alvarez is behind the plate catching them and not, it's startling. So he's been a big boon to them. And Mark Vientos, who has been up and down 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years, is this the time he's going to stick? Well, it looks like he has finally reached the maturity level, and his talent is coming out. A month, 6 weeks doesn't make a career, but obviously the guy looks like a major leaguer. He did not look confident before as a major leaguer. He gives the Mets another power bat, and his fielding's improved at third base. So I think those two have helped the Mets resurgence, and the Mets have had this resurgence with a terrible bullpen. I mean, let's face it, losing Diaz coming off the patella tendon injury, and Diaz was good the first five weeks or so, and then he had a horrendous week, and then he went on disabled list with the shoulder impingement. Then he came back and he got suspended for substance on his hand. I think 10-day suspension is a little too much, and you can't replace him on the roster. I think the consequences of that, it might be a little too harsh, but that's not for this discussion. But the Mets
you mentioned the bats, and I got to ask you this, because obviously Vientos says, come on, Nimmo, Jose Iglesias, not only hitting, but singing songs for this team. It's great. It's fun to watch. But I've got a question for you. Marcell Ozuna has been tossed around a lot in the trade deadline rumors. Any chance he comes to here or the Bronx?
I'm sorry, who was that?
Marcell Ozuna. Any chance he gets moved to the Queens or the Bronx this trade deadline?
No chance. No chance at all. I mean, Atlanta's having trouble scoring runs. They're even without Acuna Jr., they shouldn't be at the bottom of the National League in runs produced and runs scored. So that's not happening. I think the trade deadline is going to be very interesting from a point that you have all these teams bunched up, all looking for the same thing: bullpen help. The Cubs, 5 games under 500. Everybody thought they'd be better. And you look at the standings today, and you see like the Reds and the Pirates, teams that you normally would pick off one of their players. They're only 3 games out of a playoff spot. I don't know what's in their organization's heads, but are they going to, are they going to be a seller? Are the Pirates going to sell somebody like Holderman, who used to be with the Mets, was traded for Vogelback, has done a very good job for the Pirates? Are they going to trade one of their bullpen pieces? They're only 3 games out. Why would they do that? Unless we're at a point now in Major League Baseball. Okay, we're only 3 games out. We're only 2.5 games out, but we know we're not going anywhere. I think that's unfair to the fan bases of those teams like the Pirates, the Cubs, Cincinnati, which is also only 3.5 games out of the last wild card. So this trade deadline is going to be very, very interesting to watch, to see how teams handle this. Yes, there's some teams that might make a big splash, but they're going to have to give up something. More so probably than in past years, because now we have 6 teams making the playoffs instead of what it used to be 4 and then 5 and now 6. So the trade deadline might be a bust. It might be a bunch of minor trades. I don't think you're going to see a major movement. Yeah, there's Luis Robert Jr. From the White Sox. The White Sox are just horrendous. They might trade him, but again, I don't know what this trade deadline is going to look like this year, Alex. I really don't. I know the Mets are going to look for bullpen help. The Mets also need a left-handed stick. They do. I mean, DJ Stewart, let's face it, he's a bench player. Jeff O'Neill, one of my favorite players, I think he's shot. I think he's lost his skill set. I hope I'm wrong, but
I mean, we talked about this before. He had won the batting title a couple of years ago, and now it's like he's still trying to find himself, and we're in July, right?
Yeah, no, I think he might be on the other side of the hill. I mean, here's a guy who batted not only won the batting title, I think he's batted over 300 3 times in his major league career, and he really hasn't been the Jeff O'Neill that we saw at the top of his game. So I could see
and
that.
Of course, I think of the other guy struggling, and that is DJ LeMahieu. Maybe he's past his prime as well, obviously. I mean, it is tough to watch these two guys who dominated New York, the diamond for these teams, struggling, isn't it? For me, LeMahieu's decline, I know he's been injured, has really been painful to watch, though.
It has been. I mean, I think he's still under the Mendoza line or just above 200, but obviously the Yankees signed him to a 5-year deal, which I think he has 3 years left on that deal. And obviously he's had a fine career. And but yeah, that hurts. I mean, if you want to just switch over to the Yankees, again, I'm not a defender of Stanton, of Giancarlo Stanton, but they miss him. I mean, they miss him. I know Yankee fans like to criticize him, and yes, he's hurt a lot. There's no question about it. I don't think he wants to be hurt on purpose. I don't think any athlete wants to be hurt on purpose. But they missed that bat. I mean, once if you can control Aaron Judge and Soto, I mean, 2 guys batting back to back, which is just unbelievably, ridiculously. Who has 2 guys like this? Yeah, I know the Dodgers have Shohei Ohtani and Betts and Freeman and Will Smith. Yeah, they probably have the best 1 to 4 for sure combination in the lineup. But again, the Dodgers are in the same boat that the Yankees in. Once you get to the bottom of their lineup, there's a lot of outs. There's a lot of outs, Alex, and so the Yankees might be looking for a bat. Where are they going to find it?
The thing about this team, by the way, and it's fascinating, they replaced him with Grisham, and I'm a big Trent Grisham fan. Just kidding. I'm gonna just keep track of him. Maybe he'll win more games for us. How about that? No, Trent Grisham has really been the fill-in, and I'm asking myself, why not play J.D. Davis? They've signed him up. Why not get him more bats? Would you agree with that?
Well, again, if you saw the game last night, Grisham drove in both runs, and he made a great catch in right center field, which could have cost the Yankees the game. I mean, J.D. Davis cannot play the outfield, so that's one reason why I guess J.D. Davis will get against some left-handed pitching. But again, the Yankee lineup, which I thought was constructed better early in the year than it's turned out to be, might be Cashman might have missed an opportunity or two to add in certain areas. It seems like it's the same lineup that we've seen in the past when the Yankees play good, and the Yankees have not played well against good teams. Atlanta came into the Yankee Stadium, beat them 2 out of 3. The Dodgers beat them 2 out of 3. We know that they've had trouble with the Orioles in the 2 series that they play. So the Yankees have not struggled. Yes, the Mets aren't a good team, but it's big games, and the Mets scored 21 runs against them in 2 games. So it seems to be a Yankee Groundhog Day as we get further into the season, that the same warts keep showing up with this team. Carlos Rodon, I've never been a fan of. I don't think he's very good. The Yankees gave him $162 million. I said it when they signed him. I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. Marcus Stroman is what he is, a 5 or 6 inning pitcher. Sometimes he looks better than that. Cortez, is what he is. He's good. But again, we're looking at guys, and this is Yankees, Mets, whoever. You go 6 innings, and then you're putting so much stress on that bullpen. And these guys are overworked coming out of the bullpen. On the Met game the other night, Gary Cohen made a tremendous point 2 nights ago when the Mets were up 6-0, and they brought Reed Garrett in. And Garrett couldn't get out of the inning. And Gary Cohen said, they talk about protecting these starting pitchers with pitch count. But he said that Reed Garrett had pitched 78 pitches in the last 4 days. And Gary was prophetic because yesterday the Mets had to put Reed Garrett, who had been one of their best relievers until they started overworking him, on the disabled list because he had inflammation in his arm. They got to stretch these starters out more. And I'm not saying this is Mets Yankees thing. This is a baseball thing. They got to stretch these starters out more because you can't go to the bullpen 2 or 3 times a night and expect to get 2 or 3 relief pitchers to be at the top of their game and effective every time they come into from the bullpen. It's just it's impossible.
The Met pitching has been a lot stronger than the Yankee pitching, hasn't it? It's amazing to me. Because you come in with Garrett Cole, who gets injured. You come in with Luis Gil, who's actually had a 9-win season, struggled over the last month or so. But the Mets pitching staff, from starter to bullpen, has not allowed runs, in a dramatic way in a while now, have they?
No, the Mets starting pitching has been good. I mean, obviously, I think Mendoza and Jeremy Hefner, the pitching coach, have done a good job of stitching bullpen stints effectively, but the Mets are going to have to strengthen the bullpen. I think bringing up Buto has helped, and but Alex, I mean, if you're not on top of this, guys are being sent up and down to the minor leagues every day. Danny Young was on a team last week. He was sent to Syracuse. They brought him back up yesterday as an example. So it's really a different type of Major League Baseball than we knew growing up. And, it's a long season. And, obviously people were overreacting to the Yankees' success early on. And we said it on his previous podcast, it's only June 2nd. It's only May 15th. People were overreacting. Everybody was pouring dirt on the Houston Astros. They were 12 games under 500. They have major injuries to their starting pitching staff, but they went from 12 games under 500 to now they're 48 and 44. They're 2.5 games out of the playoff spot. I think they'll be in the playoffs. I think they're going to win a division. I think they'll catch Seattle. Bregman has caught fire
pretty easily. I mean, they're only down 2 games, so that should be interesting.
And that the other thing is that some of these other teams don't have they've been through the wars before. They know how to win. They know how to win when the going gets tough. And, so they would be a team to really look at. They've won 16 out of 20. They're just a bunch of professionals, and they have the heart of a champion, as the old saying goes. But, if you want to just talk about the first half of the year, the good as far as some surprise American League teams, Boston. I never thought Boston was going to be threatening for a playoff spot, and they've gotten strong starting pitching. We talked about Rafael Devers. He's a star, and Jared Duran. I mean, terrific outfielder, and he's come out of nowhere. Kansas City was 56 and 106 last year. They've had good starting pitching. I think they've had more than half of their games this year with quality starts. And I'm not a big quality starts guy, but I'm just using it as a point of reference. Bobby Witt Jr. is a superstar. If he played for the Mets or the Yankees, they'd be anointing him, sainthood. You got to give Cleveland a lot of credit. You got to give, they lost Shane Bieber. They haven't missed a step. They have the second best record in the major leagues, I think. Yes, the second best record in the major leagues, 57 and 33. They've done a great job. Stephen Kwan, batting 365. He's a bat manipulator.
Wasn't he written off as some no-hitter that he couldn't even hit? And now he's done this amazing year for the Guardians. I love baseball when stories like that happen, where these guys are written off and all of a sudden, Stephen Kwan, Ben Rice, it's 5 home runs, 3 in a game, first rookie in Yankee history. I mean, baseball is magical like that, isn't it?
Well, it is. And, you're talking about probably who I think is the best player in Major League Baseball right now, Aaron Judge. You could talk to Yankee announcers, Yankee scouts, and I know of one of my friends who did speak to him. And this is when Aaron Judge had been up for a cup of coffee, been back and forth. They sent him back down to AAA, and he asked him, what about Aaron Judge as a prospect? And this person, I hate to use anonymous sources, but I don't want to get this young man in any trouble, this person in any trouble. He said, Aaron Judge, not a big-time prospect. And now he's the best player, in my opinion, in Major League Baseball. So what I'm trying to say is you don't know. You don't know. Like you just said, Stephen Kwan is a tremendous outfielder, and obviously they have a terrific young team. They've been able to. They traded Lindor, and everybody thought that was the end, and it wasn't the end. So watch out for the Indians.
The other thing about the American League is the disappointment of the Texas Rangers. That team shocks me. They don't look like defending champions right now.
Well, you beat me to it. I just talked about the surprising AL teams, the good, the surprising AL teams, the bad. You mentioned the Texas Rangers. Yes, you're 100% correct. They're 5 games under 500. They're 6.5 games out of first place. Obviously they're closer in the wild card, but they don't have DeGrom. They roll the dice with DeGrom, and I guess he might be back in August. And Scherzer just came back. That they're not hitting like they did last year. I think they'll make some kind of run, but I agree with you. I don't know if they'll get in. The Toronto Blue Jays, which I thought were going to be a contender. There are rumors that at the trade deadline they're going to empty the roster, and if that might be the team that trades Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That might be the team that teams might try to take advantage of if they start dumping guys. Chris Bassett, who was very good for them last year, and was a good pitcher. He might be on a trading block. That's a team to look at if you want to say getting big time guys from their roster. But to me, they have been the biggest disappointment in in the American League. I mean, in the NL, surprising teams on the good side, I don't know if there is any. Maybe the way the Cardinals have played a little bit. But again, they're only 4 games over 500. They're only a game ahead of in the third wild card. So they're not so good in the National League. I thought the Cubs would be better. Like I said, I'm surprised that Atlanta's had so many offensive struggles, even with the terrible knee injury to Ronald Acuna Jr. But Alex, there's a lot of bad teams in Major League Baseball. I mean, really, led by the atrocious White Sox, the Marlins, the Rockies, the Athletics. You know, they're just terrible teams. So,
which raises an interesting point, because time and time again, we hear about how the revenue funneling from the bigger teams to the smaller markets, and yet the smaller markets. I know Chicago is a big city, but the White Sox, in comparison, is still a smaller market team, right? So, how are these teams flailing if they're getting revenue funneled down to them? It's kind of head scratching, isn't it?
well, the Marlins I'm going to give the Marlins a little bit of an excuse here. They've had major injuries to their starting pitching staff. Last year at this time, they were 53-39 on this date, and and right now they're 32-60. So they've had some injuries, major starting pitcher injuries, and they were built on starting pitching. But it seems like the Marlins are always up and down. Every time they have a good year, the next year they crap out. Now, usually it's by selling off players. This time it's mostly through injury, and some guys not having the years that they had last year. But and like you said, the White Sox. I mean, let's face it. Jerry Reinsdorf is their owner. He's a big time owner. He owns the Bulls, and they should not be on pace for the worst record maybe in franchise history. And they've been playing baseball as the Chicago White Sox since 1901. So that's, first of all,
I hate to make this joke, but they can't even throw games their way this time. So
they cannot. That's right. That's right. But second half decline. I think the Padres. Got to watch the Padres. There's something about that team that something's not clicking. I know they won 9 out of 10. Now they've lost 6 out of 8. They just got swept at home by the Mariners. The Mariners, who were in free fall, beat them twice in a row. So I think they're a National League team in the second half to look at as far as declining. In the American League, I don't know if Kansas City could sustain what they've done so far this year. Their great first half of this year, which has been remarkable, with basically the same team, just getting a little bit more mature. You know, they got 50 wins already. Last year they had 56 for the whole season.
right.
So
Some of those wins, they came back from like 8-1 or 10-1 against the Mariners, and those were some really encouraging wins. But can you get away with that against a team like the Guardians in the second half, or a team like even the Yankees? I mean, you're not going to get away with that every day out.
No, you're not. But again, this is a growing year for Kansas City. Nobody expected this, so they're a fun team to watch. Maybe Minnesota. I've never had. They've never had postseason success in the last decade or so. They've had a very good year. They're 5 games behind the Guardians in the division, and they're 53-40, which is excellent. But I don't know. I don't know if they can maintain that pace. Carlos Correa is having a great year for them. The other team, and this is going to be a surprise, that you might see a decline unless they make a trade for pitching at the deadline, are the Orioles. A tremendous young baseball team. They've never gone through this before, but they're a tremendous young baseball team. They made the playoffs last year, but they were eliminated quickly. They've lost they have major injuries to their pitching staff, and so we'll have to see what they do. But Gunnar Henderson, I would say, is right behind Aaron Judge for MVP at the halfway point. The kid is tremendous. He got 27 home runs, 61 RBIs. His on-base percentage is over 380. So I think right now the leading MVP candidates, Judge has got to be number one. Gunnar Henderson, I say, is number two. Put Stephen Kwan up there and put Soto up there also in the second half. But there's some some great young players in baseball. We talk about Henderson. You talk about Paul Skeens, who made the All-Star team controversially because he just came up and made 8 or 9 starts and he's on the All-Star team. Ellie Dela Cruz.
Oh, and that's a kid that they took out after 6 or 7 innings of no-hit ball, and everybody was saying, "I take him out. Let him try for that. I know he's a young kid, but let him throw."
Well, 15 years ago, that would have happened. But now with all this babying of pitching and analytics and all this nonsense, it's just a different world. Joe Madden said something the other day, and he's right. The trouble with baseball is it used to be a generational sport. It went from your father, your uncle, your mother, whoever followed these teams, and the kids would pick it up from their parents, from their families. That doesn't happen. Baseball, I don't think, is a generational sport. I agree with Joe Madden, what he said the other day. It's really become a niche sport, which is disappointing. I think it's the best of all games. Yes, I don't like the free runner. I think it's ridiculous. I do think they need a salary cap. It's never going to happen. The Baseball Players Association is probably the most powerful union in the world, or as powerful as any. But it's not the same. It's not the same sport. It's generational. My father took me to baseball games, and my brother.
And my dad had me at every stadium possible. It felt like for a while, right? So we go to Philly, we go to Boston, we go to. When I was 6 months old, they took me out to Oakland and Kansas City. And by the way, back then I had a feeding tube when I was really little, so we had to travel with all this medical stuff. But he did it to get me out there. But my first real memory of baseball was at NYU hitting the ball when I was 3 years old, and we invented crutch ball, where I would hit the ball with my crutches. So that's my story about generational this game is, and that's why St. Anthony Rizzo was so special, because my dad was a Cub fan, and to tell Anthony thanks for winning the World Series for my dad, it's a moment right there.
Well, again, what you just said is correct. One of my friends who works in a business of sport said when the Cubs won, his uncle called him, and his uncle, who was like 80 years old and lives in Chicago, got very emotional, started weeping that he was so happy the Cubs won. I get that connection. And that's our connection with all sports. It could be the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, college sports that we root for. But baseball always had that lifelong connection. And, they've lost it. They've lost it. They got to get it back. I mean, when I was growing up, Alex, the game that's going to be played Tuesday night, the All-Star game, truly was the Midsummer Classic. It's not anymore. I mean, I'm not setting my schedule on Tuesday night to watch it. If I'm home, yeah, maybe I'll have a couple of live look-ins. But that All-Star game, I mean, the pressure for that 1 9-inning baseball game between the National League and the American League was so intense. When I was younger, if you made the All-Star team as a pitcher in the American League had a rule: you couldn't pitch on the Sunday before the All-Star game. You could not pitch. Now I see Rafael Devers is not hurt, but he's not even going to the game. They don't have the pride. I don't want to say that a guy like Devers doesn't have the pride, but something is missing. Something is missing. Joe Morgan, who scored the famous Pete Rose game when Pete Rose played all 12 innings and bowled into Ray Fosse and tore his shoulder up. In the bottom of the 9th inning, Joe Morgan scored on a sacrifice fly to tie the game and send it to extra innings. Joe Morgan said, here's a guy who played in the 1970 World Series. He played in the 1972 World Series. He played in 1973 NLCS, and they got upset by the Mets. Then they won the World Series in 75 and 76. He played in all these big games. He said that run he scored in the All-Star game to tie the All-Star game was one of the most important runs he scored in his major league career. Now you have guys who don't even stay for the whole game. They leave and go home. That's where baseball has lost its connection as a national pastime. And that really frustrates me.
Okay,
and
well, that's
again,
why
you're
we have
talking
you
to
on
a
here.
guy, Alex, you know I love all sports.
That's why I keep you on here, because you give us that sense of that national pastime and that history of baseball and that love of the purist of the game, purism of the game. Which brings me to my next thought. Can announcers across the board not call post All-Star game the second half? It's really the second part. We are already into the second half of the season, and announcers just bill it as the second half. It's really not. And I don't know, as a purist, I think we just call it the second part.
Alex, you're right. You're 100% correct. The halfway point of the schedule happened, as far as total major league games, happened on June 24th. So you're right. It's not it's the post All-Star break. That's what it should be called, of the season. So you're 100% correct. There's not 81 games.
Post All-Star break, the Yanks have Tampa, then they have the Mets, and it's Subway Series right after the break. But what are you looking for in July, the rest of the month? I mean, are we going to see an Alonso-less Mets in August? That's the big question I think people are going to look at this
I really would doubt that. I mean, I cannot see that happening. The Mets, obviously, it looks like, unless they go into a 10-game losing streak, they're going to be in it. I cannot see the Mets trading Alonso and somebody picking him as a rental, even if the Mets would re-sign him in the offseason. I just can't see it. I mean, I think the fans, and he hasn't been the best Met player this year. First of all, who are they going to replace him with? I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, maybe they won't resign him at the end of the year. I don't know, but I just can't see it. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Maybe I'm looking at it through, through rose-colored glasses, that they won't do this. But I cannot see them trading Alonso. I really can't. I mean,
especially because they are in contention now. So there's that going on as well. By the way, we're just at Mets Willet's point, and the fans are leaving for the ballpark. There's a little play-by-play for you as they're filing the exits of the LIR and going up to see Thursday afternoon baseball. Remember those games used to be at noon? I love that.
You're right.
Noon. That was fun. Now I work, so there you go. It's like different now. But question for you, because on the mound today, we'll pause it a little later as the game's going on. But David Peterson, now that's a guy you were nervous to have on the mound in a big situation, and yet he's 3-0. What's his change been?
My problem with it, not problem. The situation, in my opinion, as I watch David Peterson pitch, he's got good stuff. And obviously, you need effective left-handers in your rotation. He's just got to get more consistent. I mean, he might pitch 4 or 5 good innings, and then in inning 6, he'll blow up, or he'll blow up in inning 2. But the rest of the game, the next 5 or 6 innings, he'll be okay. He just has to get consistent. And now he should be an effective number 3 starter. He's not going to be. Nobody's going to confuse him with Jerry Koosman, but he should be better than he is, in my opinion. He's just got to get more consistent, and hopefully that happens. And again, I've been very critical of the Mets, saying that they were bad and boring, and they've turned it around. I'm glad, but they've done this not to disappoint
you, Lou. The Yankees had a closed-door meeting yesterday, so closed-door meetings work.
Alvarez came back. Vientos has added spark. Lindor to the top of the lineup. The other thing, the Mets have done this without their best pitcher. I mean, there's no question that Senga is their best pitcher, and hopefully, when he does return, hopefully after three more rehab starts, he could pick up where he left off at the end of last year, because last year he got better every month. and he finished second in the Rookie of the Year. So the Mets miss him. So, we'll see. But they got to fortify the bullpen. Losing Brooks Raley was a death knell for them. He was their only effective left-hander. And I've been disappointed in Drew Smith. I thought he had the potential to be a closer. Now he might need Tommy John. And so we won't see him for the rest of the year. So those are injuries that hurt. So they've done a good job. I'm going to cut them a little slack right here as we approach
matchup. The rotation comparisons, though, Cole's just coming back still. Stroman's been a rock solid pitcher for this team. Rodon, he's struggled, and it's like almost a lost cause every time out now. I don't know what's in his head. Nestor, on and off, not always nasty. Although it was great, he got to talk about my podcast. Not always nasty, and then you've got Heel, and he's been better as of Sunday night. If I look at the Mets, Quintana, Manaea, and Peterson. Now, Manaea struggled here and there. What is that about? I've seen a couple of his starts. He's been struggling at times, hasn't he?
When since Alvarez has come back and he's caught Manaea, his ERA is about 170, somewhere in there. I don't know the exact numbers, but when it's not Manaea and another guy is catching him, his numbers are around 550 or 560. Same thing with Quintana. So again, there's so many assets that a team needs to be effective in in winning games. So
in the remaining few minutes we have here, I want to ask you this because not many people remember or are thinking about this. It's 60 years of Shea Stadium and 60 years of the World's Fair. 64 had to be an incredible year in Queens. I mean, 69 was amazing, obviously, but 64 was like a lot of renewal, a lot of new spirit. The new building is up, Shea Stadium. But I got to ask you, baseball fan, baseball lore historian, Lou Terminello, your favorite memory at Shea, and I'll tell you mine.
Okay, my memory of Shea Stadium, and I love Shea Stadium. I did. I loved going to Shea Stadium. It was easy to get to, whether before I learned how to drive or I had to drive there. And I remember the World's Fair very well because the nuns at St. Peter and Paul Roman Catholic School in Hoboken, New Jersey, took us to the World's Fair. So I remember that vividly. But my favorite Shea Stadium moment, and there's been a couple, but one stands out and could never be topped, whether I live another 50 years. Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Mets were heavily favored to win that World Series. They were down 3-2. Everybody knows the story. They were down to the last out, 2 outs, nobody on. I was sitting in loge boxes behind the Mets dugout. I could look into the Red Sox dugout. I could still see Oil Can Boyd waving the towel, dancing. I could still see that infamous for like 2 seconds on the left center field scoreboard on the Diamond Vision. Congratulations, world champion Boston Red Sox. They came down instantly, but everybody saw it. Then the Mets got the 3 hits. Then the wild pitch as Mookie kept battling to get on base. And then when Mookie hit the ground ball, I said to my friend who I was with, I said, "This is trouble." Now, I'm not going to say I knew the ball was going to go through Buckner's legs. I didn't, but I thought Mookie had a great chance of beating that out to first base. Now, that would not have won the game for the Mets if Mookie had beaten it. Now, there would have been, of course, Knight would have had to stop at third. But when the ball went through Buckner's legs, for the next 6 or 7 minutes, Shea Stadium, I thought was going to fall apart. You actually can feel the level, the sections like almost moving. It was incredible. I'll never go be.
It was at Game 7 also, so there's that.
I was at Game 7, which was also a fantastic event at Shea. They were down 3-0 early. They couldn't hit Hurst in the first 2 games. Bruce Hurst had stymied them. He beat them 1-0 at Shea in one of the coldest baseball games I ever attended live. game on the Saturday night. He beat them in game. He beat them in game 4 at or game 5 at Fenway. The Mets couldn't hit him. They were down 3-0, and then they scored 3 runs off him. Keith Hernandez got the hit that tied the game at 3-3, a two-run single. After that, I knew that I had a feeling the Mets were going to win, and then Knight hit the home run to put them ahead. They were up 6-3. The Red Sox came back to 6-5 and had the tying run at second with nobody out. But Orozco and got out of it. McDowell and Orozco got out of it, and then Strawberry hit a home run leading off the bottom of the 8th inning, and the Mets scored a couple of other runs and then won 8-5. But game 6 and game 7, yeah, I'll remember game 6 as far as baseball memories. But nothing will top game 6, Alex. Nothing. It was incredible.
That's a moment, and I wish I saw you on those documentaries that were made over and over again. You would have been a great addition to that. But that's why we have you here, because we get to hear your thoughts about being there for game 6. And I mean, I know they were the Bash Boys or whatever they were. Not the Bash Boys, but I know they were, people called them, characters and misfits.
Yeah, they were. They were characters. They
but
were.
I tell you, the one guy that really kept them all in line is Gary Carter. And I really miss him every time they honor him. It does choke you up because he kept the team in line. He was their leader, and what a great acquisition in 1985. And look what it led to, really.
Oh, he was the final piece. There's no question about it. And him and Hernandez, the intangibles of those guys, which you don't see in statistics, meant so much. And Keith Hernandez is the best first baseman I've ever seen, from a fielding and having control of the diamond. No question about it.
Well, Lou, on that note, I really appreciate our time today on Terminello's Take. I don't know if I heard your AL MVP. Well, I heard a couple of, I don't know if I heard your NL MVP. Is Ohtani the guy right now or what?
Well, I'm sure he'll be up there. I would say that he would be up there. Mookie Betts would be up there, so far. And I know he missed some action. He was injured, but Bryce Harper, who's already won 2 MVPs, has to be considered, especially if he has a big second half. To me, Bryce Harper is the most underrated superstar, which I know is ridiculous because he's won 2 MVPs, one with 2 different teams. But
he also energizes that Phillies team like I've not seen it before. I mean, he lights up that whole lineup. He invigorates guys like Trey Turner with the grand slam the other night. He gets into those guys' faces, so to speak, and then energizes them. He fires them up every night. I could see it when I watch some of their games.
I agree. The other guy that you have to look at, if he continues like he's been doing, and he is the straw that stirs the drink for the Indians, is Stephen Kwan. And Yordan Alvarez for the Astros. I mean, you talk about an underrated power hitter and run producer. He's another one, but I think he got hurt last night. I don't know to what extent he got hurt. But again, he's in the American League, so he's another one that we didn't talk about. But yeah, I mean, in the NL, I would have to say right now it's Betts and Ohtani. And the one thing about the Dodgers, who haven't been so impressive this year, I don't know if I don't want to say that they're going through the motions, because when you go through the motions, you get bit at the end and then the bluesing. But they haven't been challenged in the NL West. They're 7.5 games up on the Padres. I don't know if they're going to turn in a high gear in the second half of the year, or are the Dodgers going to rest guys? I mean, they put Tyler Glass now on the disabled list. I don't know if it's just to rest him, if he has just a little twinge. So, I mean, that's something to look at. But I mean, hopefully, it's a very good second half of the year, and I think the Yankees are going to be okay. I mean, yeah, all right, they're 7-17 in their last 24, but they're not. That's not going to last.
Lou, this has been a great conversation. My thought is, don't disrespect Nimmo or Lindor. I think Judge might try for 62, but we'll see what he does with that. And I think Rice keeps cooking in the Bronx. Those are my thoughts heading into the All-Star break. What do you think about that?
Hey, it sounds good to me. And I mean, Ben Rice hitting those 3 home runs after only 17 at bats, or is pretty impressive. So kudos to the young kid. That's something that he'll never forget in his life. So, like I said, I'm hoping for a very good second half of the year.
Well, we'll find out more with Lou Terminello on Terminello's Take on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. Lou, thanks as always for joining.
Alex, thank you always for having me. Look forward to next week.